In today's NUFC Transfer Daily, we're going to be looking at a possible new name in the right wing chase, talking about Sandro Tonali's future, and also discussing a possible move for a young Moroccan defender. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another video, and thanks so much to everyone who's continued to support me in the first week of NUFC Transfer Daily going live. I really appreciate it. This is the final one of the week. I'll be back on Monday unless something breaks over the weekend, then I may well pop on. But if you haven't already, please do subscribe. You know what I'm going to say, it really does make a huge difference. I think you can see that just on the basis of this week and how much of an impact it's had on the growth of the channel and the growth of the videos. As soon as you turn this video on, please hit like, and if you haven't already, do subscribe. Today we're going to first start by talking about another right wing possibility linked a few weeks ago. His name came up again this morning in a report, so I thought I'd just pop on and talk about him, as well as Sandro Tonali's future. There's also a little bit of Joe Willock that I want to discuss as well. And then there's the move for young Moroccan defender. We'll start with the right-hand side player as Francisco Trincão from Sporting Lisbon. A really exciting possibility, this, I think, even though, again, sort of similarly to Moise Kean yesterday, people may think about him differently. People may look at him and think, well, he played for Wolves for a season, didn't pull up any trees a few years ago, has been at Barcelona, didn't have a great time there as well. But he's thrived at Sporting Lisbon since he's been there. He started his career at Braga, one of the sort of brightest sparks that maybe didn't fulfill or hasn't fulfilled his potential yet in Portuguese football in the way that maybe Bruno Fernandes has or Bernardo Silva has, for example. But a really talented, exciting right winger. 9 goals and 14 assists, helping Sporting win the Portuguese league title last season. And if you look at the stats again, you can see how impressive he is in terms of the output that he has. 84th percentile for successful take-ons, but it's really the assists and the shot-creating actions and the goals that he scores that are the difference maker, because he's such a direct player, very similar to Anthony Gordon in that sense, very raw maybe at the top level, maybe needs a little bit of work with Eddie Howe, but you would imagine that he could get in on this player and make a huge impact in the way that he has with Gordon. And it feels like a player, for me, that Newcastle should definitely look at. The fact that he's been in the Premier League before and had a difficult time maybe would mean that he wouldn't necessarily come in and hit the ground running. And yes, there are plenty of other options, as we discussed on a video earlier this week, of players who may well do that bit better. But in terms of spreading the value, and again, I said yesterday I was going to write a piece for Forbes on the fact that the European market is much more fruitful than the Premier League market, and I did that, and lots of people have read it, and I really thank people for getting involved and interacting with the piece. I've been really happy with the reaction to it as well. But the point stands, Newcastle can spend £60 million on Mbeumo, can spend £60 million on João Pedro if they want, but their track record doesn't go particularly far. Whereas if you go abroad and you look at Man City, as I said in the article, Tijani Reinders, the best midfielder in Serie A voted for last season, in a Milan team that was a bit of a basket case as well. Sandro Tonali coming in as an Italian champion to Newcastle, Sven Botman, French champion to Newcastle, Trincão, Portuguese champion. Yes, it's not one of the major leagues, but the fact that you could probably get him for about half the price of Mbeumo, half the price of João Pedro, and the output he's got, the fact that he's got 11 caps and 2 goals for Portugal, he's got big game experience, he's 25, he can definitely improve as well. And I think he's so pacey, so skillful, so direct, but the crucial thing, as I said, is that the level of output that he has, the fact that he's not somebody who flatters to deceive, he has great numbers next to him. And yes, again, it's only the Portuguese league, and we've seen players come from that level and struggle to adapt, but also we've seen players come from that level and thrive, and that is a risk, I think, that's maybe worth looking at the right price for this player. And 30 million, 35 million, which has been banded about, his value on transfermarket.com is 35 million euros, which means that is the sort of price point you could maybe look at getting this deal done for. He's obviously got Champions League experience. He's proven at that level as well. So there would be an element of risk, don't get me wrong. This is another of those players that I think you can really see, I think, with the theme with my videos. This is what Newcastle have got to look at, because if they've got 100 and 150 million to spend, if they can go and find 5 or 6 of these players that would just improve the squad across the board, you can get a right winger, you can get a striker, you can get a defender, you can get a centre midfielder maybe, and a goalkeeper, then perhaps that's something that needs to be talked about a little bit as well. So let me know again what you think in the comment section below. Not a strong link, this one, not particularly one that I expect to happen anytime soon, but I would be very, very intrigued to know what people think. Again, I think Wolves maybe has distorted people's view of him because he was very young at the time. It was 3 or 4 seasons ago. He didn't have a great time, and I think Wolves were struggling at that point anyway. Whereas in this Newcastle team, he feels like that sort of project that Eddie Howe can get into, a bit like Gordon, a bit like Livramento as well, a bit like Hall, but maybe slightly more experienced than that as well. So there's a real good balance, I think. As I say, his numbers and his output, 14 assists, 9 goals last season, is a really, really intriguing thing. And yes, Portuguese league leaves a question on him, but the value you're getting him for, 35 million, I think that in today's market is something that's probably worth offsetting, in my opinion. We're going to move on to Sandro Tonali next. He's given an interview in Italy, basically reaffirming his commitment to Newcastle United, saying he's found people he loves and he's found people he cares about, and he's not going to let that slide. So it's basically ending any speculation. There's been plenty of it, of a return to Serie A. Not that there's ever been a reason to worry about it, because he's always been speaking on these terms, and his agent said that he didn't think that anyone in Italy could afford to bring Tonali back to the country. Newcastle need to build their team around Tonali again next season. He's the reason why they had that massive upturn in form. Going in at 6 in December made such a difference. But it's not that he's reaffirmed his commitment. It's not that he said he's happy. That's the big thing here. There's a real theme with Newcastle's top players. You think of Bruno Guimaraes, you think of Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon. I know people say that Anthony Gordon seems to want to leave, but everything he said is not just saying how happy he is at Newcastle, and not just saying how he's fine here and maybe we'll see what happens in the future. It's very, very, very strong language, and that's the same with Tonali. To say that it's not just the football club that really is keeping him, it's the people that he cares about. It really vindicates what Eddie Howe has brought to the club in terms of building that empathetic human connection with his players, and the team feels like it's really going places because of that. And that's withstood quite a lot of off-field issues over the last year, that togetherness that Howe has built with his players. So it's not just the fact that him, Isak and Bruno and Gordon are saying, oh, we're happy and we'll see where it goes. There's a very, very strong commitment on deeper levels than just football that suggests that this isn't just the same thing what used to happen under Mike Ashley, when Johan Cabaye or Moussa Sissoko would go away to French duty and they'd have an interview and they'd sort of say, yeah, I'm happy in Newcastle, but we'll see what happens. All of these interviews with Newcastle's top players suggest that they're really, really, really happy at the club, and that's an underrated thing. That's people aren't talking about that enough. If you saw the interview with Tonali on the Newcastle YouTube channel a few weeks ago, where you met his fiancée, you went into his house, you met his dog, you saw how happy he's become in Newcastle. I think he really does feel the connection to the city and the club. He wants to repay the faith of the club that supported him when he was going through his ban and all that sort of thing. And that isn't just superficial, that's the point I'm making. It's very, very real, and Sandro Tonali is absolutely crucial. And the fact that he is this happy at Newcastle, and saying that crucially to the Italian media as well, is really, really big. A couple of quick other things. There's an interview with James Trafford, which I didn't mention in the intro, on Ben Foster's podcast, where he admitted that he really did want to move to Newcastle last summer, and that may well open the door again, I think, this summer for a move. Newcastle are very keen on him. As we mentioned in Monday's video, the price is probably around £30 million. We'll see if Newcastle make that move, but the fact that Trafford's come out and said openly that he wanted to move, and it wasn't because of playing in the Championship, it was the opportunity of going to Newcastle and what that promised. I think he'd very much saying that he would be interested in that move again, and we'll see whether Newcastle act on it. I do think they will, and we'll see how this goes. Just a quick other line on Joe Willock. It was in the Mirror that apparently Fulham want to sign him. that's been linked for a while. £25 million. I think lots of people are looking at that as 2 years in his contract to remain. 25 years old. He's a really, really good player. I'm a huge Joe Willock fan, and I think that he's got the ability to get back to that stage of his career where he was really impacting the team 2 years ago. But at the same token, last season he was fit for most of it and didn't get the games, didn't get the confidence to get going again. And maybe this is the point where Newcastle, if they are going to sell, I said yesterday about selling when you're strong to sort of boost your PSR situation down the line. Maybe this is the sort of deal that Newcastle would be open to doing. It would be fully recouping the money that they spent on Arsenal. I think that would be a really good deal considering what they've got out of Willock over the last 6 years. So we'll see how that plays out. But for me, Joe Willock, as if this deal is possible, I think it might well happen. But I'm also a huge Joe Willock fan. I think Eddie Howe's a huge Joe Willock fan, so if he stays, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Finally, a quick note on the Moroccan defender, Abdelhamid Ait Boudlal. Very much of interest in Newcastle. There's been talks with Rennes over a deal for the 19-year-old Moroccan defender. This was a conversation I had last week with somebody in France about this, and it feels like this is a goer from a Newcastle perspective, but also Liverpool have made a bid as well by the sounds of it. So let's see how this one plays out. But there is interest there. He's very much highly rated. But again, a youth player would most likely be what he's coming in. This is the sort of thing that Paul Mitchell is here for, to sign these younger players. Crucially, he's not played a first-team game for Rennes. He's played 9 games on loan at Angers in France. So I don't think he's going to come in and rival Sven Botman or Fabian Schär or Dan Burn, or hopefully a new centre-back next season. The likelihood is he'll slip into the academy system, or most likely probably go out on loan and get some first-team minutes elsewhere. But it's still a while off that. The talks are ongoing for a move for him, but Liverpool are interested as well. I hope you've enjoyed this final episode of the week on NUFC Transfer Daily. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you back on Monday unless something breaks, as I said earlier. Cheers.